Hello and welcome to Reid Park Zoo's Zoo to You online classroom. My name is Samantha and today we're going to be talking about animal diversity. So before we start, just so that you all know, we're going to be recording this class so that if you are not able to watch the whole program or if you want to watch it again or explore other classes that we have offered, our recordings are going to be available at reidparkzoo.org. Please note that if your video is on, my screen is set up so that all of your videos are not recorded. The best way to view this, oh yeah, you guys have view this okay. And then we also invite you guys to look for the chat button located at the bottom of your screen. So if you're on a laptop, it's on the bottom of your screen. If you're on a tablet or a cell phone, if you click on participants and then chat, you can use this to ask us questions throughout the program and answer any questions that we may ask you during the program. So go ahead and take some time to try it out now. Open up your chat box and let us know where you guys are watching us from. I am from home. All right, from Vail in Tucson, hello. How are you guys? At home, good job staying at home. All right, a lot from Tucson. Oh, the West Side, hello. And preschool desk in Tucson, all right. Well, welcome to all the classrooms. And Sonoyta, very cool. Someone said Brooklyn, awesome. Well, welcome you guys. I'm gonna go ahead and get started talking about animal diversity. So there are a lot of living things in the world around us, right? There's millions and millions of different living things, right? So there's plants, fungi, animals, bacteria, algae. And so today though, we're gonna be talking about animal diversity and what makes an animal an animal. So all living things need to be able to eat and breathe. What's unique about animals and what kind of scientists use to define what is an animal is animals have to go and look for their food. And in order to go look for their food, they generally have to be able to adapt very quickly to changing surroundings, right? Either in changing of where they are or where their food might be. There's millions of different species of animals available in the world today, and what a species is like a different type of animal, like being a giraffe or an alligator, an owl, or a frog. There's millions of different individual types of animals alive in the world today. And so we're going to talk about a lot of those different groups and kind of how scientists define those different groups. So groups that we're going to be learning about today are going to be invertebrates, fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals, and how scientists kind of define these different groups and what makes each of these groups unique and special. So the first group that we're going to talk about today are the invertebrates. Now, invertebrate seems kind of like a big word, but all it means is that it's an animal that doesn't have a backbone. So we all have skulls and we all have backbones, and our skulls protect our brains and our backbones protect our nerve cords. And that's really, really important because our brains and our nerve cords tell the rest of our body what to do. Tells the rest of our body what to do. So that information is really important and it needs to be protective. So we have really strong bones to protect them, but most animals do not have those parts to be able to protect them. So invertebrates don't have skulls, invertebrates don't have backbones, and this group is actually the largest group of animals that's alive in the world. 90% of living animal species are all invertebrates. And the invertebrates are very varied. So you'll have some like sponges, insects are invertebrates, sea slugs. And there's so much diversity of invertebrates, we don't have enough time to be able to go through all of that today. But we're going to talk about just a little bit, just noting that some invertebrates can be very, very squishy. Oftentimes aquatic invertebrates are very squishy. So like octopus, jellyfish, slugs, and worms. This little guy right here is a microscopic invertebrate called a water bear. So there's a huge diversity of invertebrates that don't really have any sort of skeleton at all. On the other hand, there are some invertebrates that do have some sort of skeleton, even though their skeleton is different than ours. So sea stars, sea urchins, insects, spiders, crabs, these all have some sort of skeleton. And some invertebrates like starfish and sea urchins have their skeleton on the inside to still protect them and allow them to move around. But their skeleton is different than ours. They don't have the same sorts of bones that we do. And then some invertebrates like spiders and crabs and beetles, they have their skeletons on the outside. And this gives them all support for their muscles to attach to and allows them to move and be able to respond to their environment. So while invertebrates are the most diverse, we don't have time to talk about all the diversity of invertebrates today, but we will talk a lot about the different groups of vertebrates. So what a vertebrate is any sort of animal that does have a skull and does have a spine to be able to protect their brain and spinal cord. So we are vertebrates because we have skulls and we have spines. There are over 50,000 known vertebrate species alive in the world today, which is pretty neat when you think about it. The first group of vertebrates that we're going to talk about are the fishes. So how scientists define fish is all fish live in the water. All fish have gills, and what gills are kind of those slits that you see on the sides of the fish's heads. Their gills are on the inside, and as water moves over the gills, that allows oxygen to get into the fish's system, and that's what allows the fish to breathe underwater is their gills. So all fish have gills, and all fish also have fins, and the fins allow them to move around in the water and be able to adapt to their surroundings, but it gives them all that movement, so fish are very well adapted for the water. Now, some fish will have skeletons that are actually made out of cartilage. And what cartilage is kind of like a soft, kind of a pre-bone. So if you touch the tip of your nose and if you touch your ears, right, you can feel how it's a lot softer than the rest of your bones. Those parts are made out of cartilage. And so for the cartilage fishes like sharks and rays, and this guy in the middle right here, he's a ratfish. Their whole skeletons, so including their skulls and including their backbones, are made out of cartilage. And this gives them a lot of flexibility and a lot of chances to really adapt to those deep water surroundings. Other fish, though, have skeletons made out of bone, and out of the vertebrate groups, bony fishes are the most diverse vertebrate animal group, and there's over 28,000 described species of bony fishes. So they still have skulls, they still have backbones, they have gills, they have fins, but their skeletons are made out of bone instead of cartilage, and so that's how we define the bony fishes. And there's lots and lots of different species of bony fishes all over the world. Some are in freshwater, some are in saltwater. All right, so we'll have a little bit of a participation game here really quick of which of these is kind of not like the others. And there's no right or wrong answers here, but we just learned about invertebrates and we just learned about fishes. So we have a starfish, a jellyfish, a crayfish, and a surgeonfish. And why don't you guys tell me in the chat which of these, based on what you've learned just now, is the least like the other ones? All right. Oh, good. See, I'm getting lots of different answers. Yeah. So some of you think 4, right? Because 4, the bony fish, is a fish and a vertebrate, so that's different than the rest. Yeah, the jellyfish is kind of a squishy invertebrate, while the rest of them have some sort of skeleton. The crayfish is the only one with an external skeleton. The starfish has different numbers of limbs than the rest of them do. Nice job. Oh, I like that. Good job, you guys. So all of them are different in their own ways and have those differences that make them unique from all the other species on there. All right, our next vertebrate group that I'm going to talk about are the amphibians. So amphibians are animals that have to live near water. So they can live on land and they can live in the water. Most amphibians have lungs so they can actually breathe air. But amphibians, their eggs have to stay wet. So down here, these are some frog eggs under a leaf that have to be kept in a moist environment. This amphibian is cool. This is called a caecilian. It's like an amphibian snake, but as you can see, she's protecting her eggs in the mud, and she'll actually take care of them as they grow up. So their eggs have to stay wet, and their skin has to stay wet. And all amphibians are also ectothermic. And what ectothermic means is they can't regulate their own body temperature. So how warm or cool they are depends on their outside environment. So if they're feeling too cold, they might have to move into the sun to warm up. And if they're in the sun and they're feeling too warm, then they might move into the shade or into the water to be able to cool down. So they can't control their body temperature the same way that we have. We have different ways that we kind of classify or put amphibians into different groups. Frogs and toads are amphibians that generally don't have tails when they're adults, but when they're tadpoles, they do have tails. So these are baby frogs right here. And you can see they do have tails, but they don't have any arms and legs. And so as the tadpoles grow up, they'll actually absorb their tails and then grow those arms and legs. But as adults, frogs and toads do not have legs. Or do not have tails. They have legs, they don't have tails. Newts and salamanders are amphibians that do have tails. And even when they're young, they'll have tails, and then they'll have tails as well when they're adults. So newts and salamanders look kind of like amphibian lizards. Reptiles are the next group that we're going to talk about. So amphibians had to stay really close to the water to keep their skin wet and to keep their eggs wet. Reptiles, though, have very dry, scaly skin. So some people think that some reptiles are slimy. They're usually not slimy. It's just that they look shiny from their dry, scaly skin. They have eggs now that have shells, and these shells are kind of soft, leathery shells that will still protect them so that they don't dry out. But that helps them so that they are not as dependent on water. They can move further out onto the land because they don't have to keep their skin wet anymore, and they don't have to keep their eggs wet anymore. Reptiles are also ectothermic, so they have to regulate their body temperature with their environment. And there's different types of reptiles, and there are different traits that we use to kind of define those reptiles. So lizards have limbs, meaning lizards have arms and legs. And generally, lizards have long bodies and long tails. And lizards are the ones we usually see at home a lot. We'll see them crawling on the fences or on the sides of our house. But we have lots of cool lizard diversity here in Tucson. Snakes, how we define snakes is snakes don't have any limbs, so snakes will not have arms and legs. And what's cool about snakes is they also don't have eyelids, but snakes actually have special scales. So here you can see the shed skin of a snake. A lot of reptiles need to shed their skin to grow. And so when the snake shed its skin, you can see these very special scales that they use to cover their eyes. So their eyes don't dry out, their eyes are still protected, but they have those special scales that they do that instead of eyelids. Then the next group is the turtles and tortoises. So turtles and tortoises all have shells to protect them. A lot of people, like they show in cartoons that the turtles and tortoises can jump out of their shell or remove their shell, but that's actually a common misconception. Turtles and tortoises, their shells are actually their spine and their ribs that's kind of fused together to start to form that shell. And their shells are very important because they can use them to camouflage and hide in their environment, and they can also use their shells to protect them from predators. And then our last group of reptiles are the alligators and the crocodiles. And scientists kind of define alligators and crocodiles are being these long reptiles. They're going to be semi-aquatic, meaning they still have that dry skin, they still have those leathery eggs, but they spend a lot of their life in the water, but they spend a lot of it out of the water as well. And all crocodiles and alligators are going to have those long snouts, and the eyes and nostrils on the top are on the tops of their heads, so they can sit and wait in the water for a long period of time, be able to hide, and be able to breathe. All right, so here's another guessing game for you guys, where we have an alligator, an Aldabra tortoise, a poison dart frog, and a snake. So which of these do you guys think is going to be least like the others in their groups? All right, I'm seeing three, right? The dart frog is an amphibian, while the rest of them are reptiles. The tortoise is different. That one has the shell, while the rest of them don't, right? The snake does not have arms and legs, while the rest of them do. That alligator has that very long snout, which is different from the rest of them. Nice, a lot of you guys like three. Yeah, the amphibian is very different from the rest of the reptiles and is in a completely different group from them. Nice job, you guys. last couple of groups of animals that we're going to talk about, I'm going to talk about birds for a minute. So the reptiles and the amphibians were ectothermic, but birds are going to be endothermic, meaning that they can actually regulate their own body temperature. So they don't have to move from place to place in order to control their body temperatures. All birds are defined as having feathers. So whether or not a bird can fly, they're all going to have feathers. And the feathers are used for flight in many cases, but they're also used to help regulate their body temperature. All birds are going to have bills or beaks as well. And bird beaks are very, very different depending on their behaviors and what they eat. But what all beaks have in common is that they're a lot lighter than teeth. So teeth are really, really heavy, but because birds are adapted to be able to fly, they want to make themselves as light as possible. And having a bill instead of teeth helps them do that. All birds also have hard-shelled eggs. So the reptile eggs were kind of leathery, but birds have eggs with hard shells. And most birds actually have hollow bones. There's actually 2 species of birds or 2 types of birds that don't have hollow bones. Penguins and puffins do not have any hollow bones because they need to be heavier in order to be able to dive deeper. But even birds that don't fly, like ostriches and kiwis, still have some hollow bones. Next is the mammals. So how scientists define mammals is all mammals are going to have fur. And all mammals are going to feed their babies with milk. And that's what kind of defines a mammal and makes mammals different than other groups. Mammals are also, just like birds, they're going to be endothermic, meaning they can regulate their body temperature, and their fur is going to help them do that as well. And a lot of people think that all mammals give live birth, but actually this animal, which is the platypus, and echidnas do this as well, but platypus and echidnas will actually lay eggs, but they still have milk glands to be able to feed their babies. So they still feed their babies with milk, they still have fur, but they actually lay eggs. And all mammals do have fur. There's a lot of mammals that we think of that don't have fur, like whales and dolphins. But even when dolphins are young, they'll have a little bit of hair. And this is the snout or a rostrum of a humpback whale, and all these bumps are actually hair follicles. And if you look very, very closely at the rostrum of a whale, you can actually notice that whales have, the humpback whales anyway, actually have whiskers, which I think is really, really cool. All right, so one more game for you guys. Here we have a roseate spoonbill, a scarlet ibis, a barbet, and a tamandua. And so which do you guys think is the least like the others? Yeah, pretty unanimous for the tamandua this time. Yeah, the tamandua is a mammal while the rest of them are birds, even though they all have long noses. The tamandua has fur while the rest of them have feathers. All right, and I just wanted to have one more guessing game with this really, really unique animal. This is my favorite animal, and it is called a pangolin. And so of all those groups we talked about today, invertebrates, reptiles, amphibians, birds, mammals, what group do you guys think this animal belongs to? Oh, nice. All right, we have mammals, we have invertebrates, reptiles. Right, so this animal is actually, it is indeed a mammal, right? So those scales look a lot like reptile scales, but they're actually hairs that are fused together to form those scales. And if you look at a pangolin really, really closely, we'll see if we can see from this picture here. If you look at them closely, you can actually see some hairs that are still there around their face, and they feed their babies with milk. So pangolin, nice job, you guys knew that. The pangolin is a mammal. All right, that's going to wrap up our program today. But what we would like is we would love to hear from you guys. So what is your favorite animal, and what group does that animal belong to? Take a minute and answer. I'd love to see what you guys say. Oh, jaguar, anteater, and hyena. I love anteaters. Otters, yes. Jaguar, yes, we miss Bella. It'll be good when this is done. We can see Bella again. Monkeys, yes, monkeys are really, really fun. Nice. Wolves, elephants, Komodo dragons on there, a reptile, very good. Oh, you guys have tons. Oh, flamingos, wonderful. Otters. Lemur. Oh, turtle. I like the turtle emoji that you put by there too. Shark. Very nice. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. If you want to see more programs or if you want a recording of this program, be sure to visit reidparkzoo.org to see our schedule of upcoming online classes. And I will be able to, I'll stay for a few minutes and answer questions, any questions that you guys have. Someone asked already if the platypus is the only mammal that lays eggs. Actually, the echidna is another mammal that lays eggs, and there's a couple species of echidna at least. But platypus and the echidna are the last mammal species that are still alive that lay eggs. Lizard scales are not made out of fused hair. So what's interesting about hair and scales is they both come from the skin and they're both made out of keratin. But what's interesting about hair is hair kind of comes from like ancestral scales. So the lizard scales came first, the hair came later. So they're made out of the same stuff, but hairs are kind of long time modified scales. You're welcome. Oh, how old is Bella? I do not remember. Jennifer, do you remember how old Bella is?
Oh, hold on. I've asked our other teammates because I've forgotten, but she just turned 10, or if she's not 10, she's very close to being 10. We sometimes forget how old our animals are. So yes, but we believe that she just turned 10.
And then someone mentioned, yes, there are legless lizards that are often confused for snakes. So they have lost their arms and legs. They used to have arms and legs and they don't anymore. But legless lizards will have those eyelids that open and close. And yes, their underbelly scales will be different. So if you look closely at them, you would be able to see that those legless lizards are not snakes. They're still lizards. And that's why we use that kind of eyelids thing too, to be like, by the way, if it has eyelids, it is a lizard. Snakes will not have the blinking eyelids. The new baby elephant, I think she's only 3 weeks old now, barely 3 weeks. Yes, we are finding, someone's asking if dinosaurs had feathers. We are finding more and more fossil evidence that show that dinosaurs did have feathers and that they're more closely related to birds than they are to lizards. We're finding fossils in really, really fine sediment that shows those feathers, and some of the fossils are so they're so well preserved that we can actually see the stripes in some of their feather patterns. So if you ever look up a dinosaur called Sinosauropteryx, you can actually see the stripes on the tail from the feathers of that dinosaur. And not all lizards can grow back their tails, but some can. All right, I will wrap up the questions now. Thank you guys so much for participating. It was wonderful seeing you all. Take care and have a great day.